Welcome to the next episode of the Stadtsysteme GmbH podcast. Stadtsysteme stands for Urban Systems or City Systems. And for the first time today, it's in English. So we hope you will enjoy this episode. It's for me a great pleasure to have with me Daniel Brandt. He is an expert in smart city topics in a variety of areas, and we'll go into this in a second. And we will be talking about quite a few topics, primarily around 5G rollout, but also to give you an overview of the different areas that Daniel is active in. So as a quick intro from my side, and then I'll hand over to you, Daniel, to expand on this. I know that you have more than 14 years experience in this area of smart cities regarding, and this involves also very importantly the topic of street light controls. So really an area of expertise for you. You are also a co-inventor and a co-inventor in the sense that you actually are involved in a number of patents, and more than 20 patents around smart city innovations. And you also said that you are so fascinated by systems that you could really say you actually love systems because it's such an area of fascination for you, which is pretty cool, I think. And as two examples of projects where you've been involved, you mentioned, this high-tech tower or high-rise building, which is the Post Tower. It's the headquarter of the German Postal Service, so a huge company located in Bonn. And you were also involved in the construction and obviously the technological side of a variety of buildings in the Berlin government district, where today the members of parliament have their offices. So great pleasure. Welcome to from my side, and over to you for a few for your introduction.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for this great introduction already. You mentioned a lot already, and thanks a lot for having me here in your first English-speaking podcast. Thank you very much. Yeah, from my introduction, what can I say? In my early career, I started in the building automation. There was a time where you mentioned these projects like the Post Tower in the city of Bonn or the government buildings in the city of Berlin, where I used to work mainly as a system integrator. And that was a time where I recognized, hey, systems is something, it's very fascinating because you buy from different suppliers, from different vendors, devices, units, even for different applications in a building like sun blinds or heat control or room control devices, light applications. And you have to bring it together that it can communicate and interact. So this is what we name interoperable systems. And that was a very fascinating world. And these projects, the tower in Bonn, for example, 41 floors, was one of the biggest projects based on this technology that all these different applications communicates together. So that was very fascinating. And then one day, I guess it was 2006 or so, a colleague of mine were asking me, hey, should we go into the outdoor lighting business? And for my first reaction was, hey, this is on-off technique. In the evening, we switch on. In the morning, we switch off. That's it. Anyhow, I did this step, and it was the most fascinating world, I must say, talking about street lighting and especially street light controls. So that was what I did in the last 14 years, mainly working in bringing streetlights into the internet by developing controls units which can communicate on different ways to the internet. So I started with power line communication, where you have the messages, the signals on the 230 volt lines. And later on, I developed one of the first RF mesh based systems in Europe. And this was pretty successful, I would say. And then there were more and more smart city applications coming around. So we know all smart parking systems, traffic density measurements, waste bins, etc. And that's what I did until let's say last year. And last year I found my own company to focus even more on new smart city applications. Yeah, that's a bit for my person. System lover. I
Hmm.
really love systems, and I found a new playground, I would say, in the smart city area,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, where we still can do a lot of work in the interoperable system, in the system integration, and there are tons of new applications coming to us.
Yeah, this is very. It's a really broad area, and I think it's really cool to look back at the history, how you just laid it out. How these different things developed. And what I wanted to ask you is when you made that move into street lighting. I mean, how long did it take you to realize that it's actually a very very fascinating subject as well? Because when it sounded like at first you thought, it's a very simple area, but then it turned out to be much much broader and exciting.
Yeah, good question. I always like to experience everything my own, so I have my boots on the ground on the projects in the beginning always. And in the street lighting business, it's a bit different because first of all, typically you work at nighttime because street lights are working at nighttime.
Yeah,
This is something. Then you have different weather conditions. While in the building automation, you are in a safe environment, and now you are outdoor, have to work from the car and bringing systems into life. But that was a big challenge, and I learned a lot about street lighting itself, about communication in outdoor areas, in urban areas, and on power line, on RF communication. And it took me, it was not a long time. It was really fascinating from the beginning. Um, I had one project, it was a highway project, and you are standing there in the evening and you have a first test if everything works well and you can switch on, for example, the highway within 1 second. All streetlight luminaires are upcoming in LED technology, of course. um, that is really fascinating. This is
yeah,
my love for systems.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and now to give our listeners exactly what they want, probably because the one topic that everybody's talking about, 5G, high speed data everywhere we go. How does that now fit together with this history of expertise for you? Can you enlighten us in this area, and what's new, what's coming, and what is it that you can share?
Yes, of course. It's actually one of my current projects where I work on, and it's really fascinating. I have made a strategic partnership with a company named Ligman Evolve. They are located in Australia, but they have developed a pretty interesting solution for both for the IoT and smart city world, as well as for the 5G rollout and deployment. And this project is about a smart city, smart pole system. We're talking here about a smart pole which contains actually up to 2 or 3 small cabinets where we can host the system equipment for mobile network operators, as well as a super flexible system in the smart pole itself for being future proof for retrofitting IoT solutions later on. So, for example, a city wants to install in 5 years from now a new smart parking system or air quality sensors or whatever. What they have to do today is, if they want to install it on existing light poles, they have to drill a hole, for example, and they have to bend the devices, the equipment on the outer side of the light pole. This does not look really good aesthetically, and as well it harms the static of the pole, drilling a hole and so on, regarding
Sure.
wind load, etc. And what Ligman Evolve has developed here is really a smart pole, a clever thought pole, um, which provides a lot of space for the 5G rollout, for the technical equipment there, as well as all the sensors and IoT units which are in the smart city application today.
Yeah, so it's a smart pole which is configurable. There's modules. You mentioned there's when you want to make it into a pole that also acts as an antenna or as a distribution station for 5G, then two or three network providers can use this pole. And but to go on a maybe a basic question, why do we actually need this? I mean, why isn't this already why do we need this, and why isn't this couldn't we not say, well, I mean, the things that the way that it's going with the network providers and in Europe or wherever, well, everything is going well, and we'll just have additional antennas on the rooftops and everything. What's the change now, and why is this such a cool solution?
Yeah. A quick look on the history of mobile networks. In the past, we had just one tower in a city, and that was broadcasting TV and radio signals. And then we had the first mobile networks based on a C-band and the first DNet communication and so on. And this required to be a bit more decentral. So that was a time when they installed these antenna solutions on rooftops. Talking in urban scenarios, in the city, we don't have much possibilities to have antenna towers. Sometimes we see that on the outside of the cities, but within a city, there's not that much space. So they were focusing on rooftops and installing this solution on rooftops. And this was fine for 2G and 3G and even 4G solutions. With 5G, we get a new technology. We get more bandwidth, we get higher speed there, and we get also some new frequencies there to fulfill this. And this requires another level of decentralization. So we need new locations combined with the existing locations of these antenna stations. We need new locations in the city, closer to the end devices, I would say. It's a
Hmm.
big challenge at the moment because, in a city, there's not that much space. We don't have unlimited rooftops which we can use, and even the process is super difficult because you start negotiations with each and every landlord of each and every facility, and this process is slow, difficult, not super successful. And if we now can go with a smart pole which can host, I would say, one or two telco provider, and we have a kind of a standardization in this because this light pole can be applied 500 times in the city, for example. This is a good solution. This will accelerate a lot the rollout of 5G, or can accelerate a lot the rollout, because all these rooftop selections, negotiations are gone. You have just one contract partner, utility company, or the city itself. And if telcos are willing to go this way, they have a much more easy life.
Okay, so it's really a way to actually an enabler to actually bring 5G into the cities, because right now, as you mentioned, as you just explained, the problem is we cannot use the existing locations just by themselves. It will simply not be enough. So we need a different solution. Now you could also say, well, what about, can't we put these new antennas on building walls, or maybe in some other sites? I mean, what would you say to that? Why do you think these this might not be the best
No,
strategy?
especially, there's one example here in Germany, where I'm located. The government bring out a document, a paper, with a recommended deployment of 5G in three waves. So the first wave is look on the existing rooftop installations and extend them and reuse them. The second wave will be go and find new macro locations for macro cells. And these macro cell locations can be, of course, edges of roofs, for example, house walls or whatever, which is not aesthetically nice. You see the antennas; it's very present in a city. That's the one thing. But this is the second wave of deployment, and the third one would be to fill up these gaps with small cells. Small cells is really something with very low transmit power and receive power, which can fit into maybe regular luminaires or poles. But the second step is very interesting because this is something, it is difficult to find new locations for these macro cells, and they are too big to be installed on existing light poles or existing luminaires. If there are some tests and pilots and so on, but even to bring this heavy equipment on the outside of a light pole affects a lot the wind load the pole can consume, for example. So stability is a big topic here. Aesthetic is a very big topic here. Acceptance of the people, of the citizens, is a big topic here. So Ligman Evolve, with their smart pole system, fits exactly in that niche because they can and they provide a solution that you can install system equipment up to 1,200 watt into one of these cabinets, and you can have two of them for two different telco providers, for example. And this is exactly the gap between small cells later on to fill up the latest white spots and the rooftop installations.
Mhm. So yeah, so I understand that of course this really fits this niche, and it's really interesting to yeah look at this challenge that it's especially the second step, which seems to be where maybe some areas or the process is a little bit slower than expected, especially in Europe. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's absolute correct. The second
Yeah.
is the most tricky one, to find new locations for these macro cells, which higher transmit power, where you also need perfect distances, of course, to fulfill the regulations on human exposure and so on. It's good that we have all these regulations, but then you need let's say distances of 8 meter, 10 meter to house walls, etc., etc. So if this is all installed in a light pole, the light pole needs to be able to carry this on 10-meter high with antennas regarding wind load, etc. And
Mm.
that's a perfect niche exactly for the solution I saw with Ligman Evolve.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. And I think you mentioned also that you know the aesthetics. I mean, we all know, of course, in Germany and in Europe generally, and I'm sure that in most cities around the world, the way that the city looks and that the citizens feel happy about the places that they live in, it's a really important thing. And no one wants to see just random cables hanging down from other posts, and so I think this makes total sense. Um, so and what about the actual street lights? I mean, if there's let's say there's a particular design, I mean, how can you combine this as well with the Ligman technology? Maybe it's a side point, but maybe it's just one that also maybe people are curious about.
That's a very good question. Indeed, the city designer, the utility companies, and so on, they have selected a luminaire based on different parameters. For example, on design, of course, you should have a good impression when you look down the street. For example, it should be all the same kind of luminaire at the same height, for example, and of course on the quality of light, the light distribution, and so on. This is was considered when they selected the luminaire and it has been installed. Ligman Evolve did a very, very clever approach here. They said, hey, the smart pole is designed that you can bring your existing luminaire exactly on the same height with a small bracket uh, on the pole. So it does not come always. You can have a luminaire of Ligman Evolve, but you are free to select or to say, I want to reuse my existing luminaire and bring it on a bracket on the side of the pole exactly on the same height like before. And now you have, in addition, you have now the possibility to place the 5G antennas, even 4G antennas, the system components, and have also space and possibilities to mount easily IoT equipment for smart city applications.
Mm-hmm. So basically, it's really designed sort of from the ground up, just to replace a site where formerly you would just have a regular street light, replace it with this solution, and make it so that in terms of the regulations and all the other standards, it fits right there. You basically avoid all these other issues around new regulations or maybe new negotiations with certain property owners, and it's really a way forward in this context.
Yes, and you get the pole itself in the same color like the other light poles. So for the impression, for the visual impression, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
The height of the luminaire is the same as before. The light distribution is constant as before. So this is all recognized.
Yeah, yeah. So, and from your point of view, like in your opinion, what should the companies that are responsible for this rollout now, what should they do now?
The first thing is at the moment they have a very big possibility in standardization. So the companies involved, they are different, right? We have the mobile network operators like Deutsche Telekom, like Vodafone, like Orange, and so on in the world. We have some tower companies behind it, which are doing network planning, which are doing finding these new locations and so on. And that is the first time that we see that utility companies of cities are playing also a role in these cellular rollout discussion, because they own these locations, they own the streetlights, and these parties have to sit together, define the standard for the city, for example, how to equip these light poles, discuss the rollout plans of the telcos, and then find the proper locations and start installing it. And the big opportunity is here because of the standardized light pole to scale up easily. That was not possible before.
Okay, so that means when it comes to really accelerating the rollout, especially in the urban areas, these companies that you described, they really need to look at standardizing these configurations quickly, then integrating the solution into the rollout plans, and obviously in parallel piloting these systems, doing proof of concept and so forth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so this is fascinating stuff. Yeah, it's. I think now we can see that there can really be a game changer here in Europe, especially in this area and in other countries as well. I think it's really time for that because from my own experience, I could say I'm not happy with the way that the mobile network is still working in Germany. I think there's really a lot of potential there to make it better. So yeah, let's. I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much for taking part in this. It's been a great pleasure, and yeah, we will definitely speak soon. And I'll happy to have you as a guest in the foreseeable future, definitely as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Vincent. It was really a pleasure to be here in the podcast, and I'm looking forward for other topics maybe and some future episodes to be there.
Thank you. Then goodbye to everyone, and yeah, tune in again soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye bye.